Fish diseases. Fish and diseases really don't like each other. Well, actually, no. Disease really likes fish, but fish doesn't really like disease. It's kind of like your old high school relationship, except disease can't really accept rejection and the whole thing ends up on CSI. So I would say, just from my experience of running the store and talking with a lot of people and having my own tanks, that disease is probably the biggest threat to high school relationship, to marine aquariums. It is the #1 killer of fish in our aquariums. More than likely, you will lose a fish to disease before you lose it to old age. Look, there's a lot of morality and stuff that can be said about that. However, our goal in our marine aquariums is to provide the fish with the best outcome as possible. And because of that, I treat it as a major threat and a major problem to our fish health. I mean, it just makes sense. And of course, we actually know about these diseases. There's ick, velvet, bruchinella, urinema. These are all things that we've known on for a very long time. But the reason I'm making this video is actually to kind of talk about my own experiences of what I've been having issues with in the store and how I think that we should approach disease going into the future, or perhaps this will help you understand how to deal with the current disease issue. So I'd actually like to talk about the medications first, specifically how it pertains to medications in Australia, but just in general. Let's start with a medication that is used to deal with ick and velvet, which is usually copper. The best one that I know of, and that is general consensus, the hobby, is copper power. I've used copper power forever, but I have my issues with it. It's still a toxic chemical. So what I mean, the way that copper works is that it is designed to kill the parasite before it kills the fish. Fish living permanently in copper usually die eventually of copper toxicity, especially if it's at a level that is perhaps still within therapeutic range, but on the higher end. I have actually lost some fish due to copper toxicity. Ironically enough, the one that I tend to have the worst luck with is copper bands and copper. So while these medications like copper are super good for ick and velvet, not all fish can deal with them, which means if you're running a store like I am, not all fish can actually go into that system that has that copper in it, and you have to separate them, and those fish that get separated could have the ick or velvet on them. So it kind of defeats the purpose. Now, I'm not saying that chelated copper especially is not an extremely valuable thing. If a fish is in the middle of a super bad breakout, chelated copper or any copper solution is going to be an extremely effective tool against making sure that fish has the best chance of survival. And that is why I have it on hand still. But I don't see it as a good idea long term. I have actually tried it. I have tried running a system just on chelated copper long term in the store to just make sure that disease could never break out, or at least ick and velvet could never break out. But that ends up just having either fish die from copper toxicity, or because I have to separate some fish, especially lionfish, they end up giving the disease to another system anyway, and I end up in the exact same situation I would have been without the copper. So I definitely treat it as an emergency only situation, or if a customer has a fish at home and they have a separate tank that they can set up for that copper treatment, I highly recommend that, especially if the fish is in dire need of it. But there are more annoying and invisible parasites like worms, specifically internal worms. Internal worms have a very annoying thing of being, well, internal. So they show very little visible symptoms until usually the infection's gone so far that it's actually sometimes too late for the fish. You know, this happens with humans too. We don't usually know we have a tapeworm until we've downed 3 cheeseburgers, and then we're calling up our doctor asking if stomach black holes are a normal part of the human anatomy. Now, particularly in Australia, it's actually difficult to get the medication to even just preemptively deal with those parasites. Metronidazole, praziquantel, those can help deal with worms and other parasites. They are actually not available in large amounts or even in any amount on the shelves of pet stores or local fish stores in Australia. I'm not exactly sure of the politics behind it or the business behind it, but even my copper, we don't actually sell chelated copper in Australia. I have to order my copper from elsewhere and get it into Australia. I have to, if I wanted metronidazole or Metroplex or the Chem brands of these medications, I would actually have to order them from overseas, which makes them much more expensive and less financially viable, especially for a business setting where I'm potentially going through extraordinary amounts of this stuff. So my first thing that I would like to make this hobby easier in Australia is actually just to get those medications more readily available in Australia to solve things like internal parasites, because honestly, that would save a large proportion of fish that I know. Wrasses often come with internal parasites. I know a lot of wrasses that come into the store, and if they're here for a few weeks, no matter how much I feed them, it's like they sometimes just don't put on weight. And you then get the long, stringy white poop and other things that will show, oh, I have an internal parasite. Well, not me, but the fish has an internal parasite. I don't think I have an internal parasite, although I am feeling like a fourth cheeseburger. So in regards to those, there's not really an easy solution there. There is just making sure the fish is as fed and healthy as possible. So for those of you who don't know, I actually have a store here in North Queensland, Australia. It's called Tidepool Aquatics. And I actually have a principle that I run the store by, and that I've run the store by since its inception. I will never sell you a fish that doesn't eat, that has just come in on an order, and or has visible signs of disease. The reasons I've come up with those is, one, it's not fair on your wallet. It's not fair on your fish in general. And I am here to see you succeed in this hobby rather than come back in and buy the same fish 4 times in the hopes that one is the lucky one to survive. You know, to me, that just sounds cruel to begin with. Those other 3 fish before it, they didn't deserve to die, and they deserved the best chance of life there was. Following these few principles, I've had very good success with keeping my fish as healthy as possible. So I want to bring up something that has actually been brought up a lot. I believe BRS talks about it. It is the prevention versus eradication of a disease. I kind of don't like the word prevention. I think it doesn't encapsulate enough of what I mean by prevention in my sense. I think adaptation, or getting used to it. Imagine you just had a heart attack. You go to your doctor. Hey doc, I think I'm having a heart attack. Have you tried getting used to it? No, so what I mean by adaptation is allowing the fish's immune system to, first off, be as strong as possible when you first get the fish, but being as strong as possible to then fight future infections. You might accidentally put a rock in your tank that has an ick cyst on it that can lay dormant for months. I believe they can lay dormant for months. This will fact check me here. Your fish that have never been exposed to ick before are going to have no immunity towards it. And that could potentially end up in an outbreak. Obviously is where a lot of us will end and not have fun times with. Which an outbreak then becomes a runaway situation of a high parasite load, which high parasite load leads to, even with super healthy fish and fish that have a really good immune system, just because there's so many parasites, they just simply can't fight it off all at once. So I believe in a more adaptive approach to fish health. Making sure fish can fight off whatever ailment might end up in your tank, I feel has better long-term guarantees than a fish that just simply has never been exposed to it. It also allows for a margin of error with your quarantine methods or your disease prevention methods. You know, I guess it's similar to how a vaccine works. You get the vaccine so that your immunity is boosted towards the actual virus, so that when you actually get infected with the actual virus, or you may not get infected at all, your body has a better chance of fighting it off than if you didn't have the vaccine. So my 2 main concerns when fish come into the store is not ick, it's them bringing velvet and bruchinella. Velvet and bruchinella are extremely toxic. They work extremely fast and they spread extremely quickly. And they're kind of disgusting in the way that they can kill things. You feel really bad for the fish. But these 2, because they kill so quickly and they spread so quickly, they are the top of my list of concern. So I actually run and have been running a method of hydrogen peroxide for 7 months or so, and I actually haven't had an outbreak of anything. I've been extremely lucky. I'm sure there's a lot of luck on the side of that and careful choice of suppliers. but haven't had anything until recently. The way that peroxide works is I actually spent a good while with infected fish, scraping them and under the microscope seeing what parts per million and for how long of hydrogen peroxide would actually kill the free swimming either velvet or ick at this case. I haven't had Bruckinella in the store to test it, but I would like to. Not actually, let me rephrase that. I would not like Bruckinella in my store. This Bruckinella can stay away, but if Bruckinella does end up in my store, I will use it as an opportunity to just study the effects of hydrogen peroxide on the Bruckinella. So with that hydrogen peroxide concentration, it's also actually how long and when. Generally at nighttime is the best because that's when the free floating disease actually goes into the water column, especially for ick. Knowing my values and my studies from that, I've actually used that on these systems and it's worked very, very well. So even before the hydrogen peroxide though, the first thing that I make sure with my fish is that their slime coat is as strong as can be. If you don't know, the fish's slime coat is their first defense and one of their more effective defenses against these parasites to begin with. When the parasite gets stuck in the mucus coat, it takes a long time for it to dig its way to the skin of the fish to then infect the fish. And in that time, the fish can actually slough off that slime coat and in the process start building a new one. When they slough off, all the parasites and stuff that get stuck in that mucus go away. And usually in the ocean, they would go away and disappear forever because the currents would take them or the fish would move on. In a tank, however, the fish breathes the same water hundreds of thousands of times a day. That parasite never goes anywhere. It's why fish can never run from a parasite in a fish tank. When they slough off that slime coat, they actually are just getting rid of that defense that would have protected them from the other ick that's about to attach to them. So making sure that the fish's slime coat is as thick and strong as possible and the fish is as healthy as possible is very important, which is why when fish initially come to the store, I will not sell them immediately because they do not have that slime coat, or usually it's very thin, very weak because they've used it in the process of shipping as a stress response. When they develop that slime coat again, which can happen pretty quickly, but it can also take a little bit longer, a fish is much more able to deal with stress factors and disease than without it. And honestly, for most fish, I feel like that's all they need. The hydrogen peroxide then is an added defense on top of that that makes sure that the parasite load never goes too high. I can guarantee now that, with all my peroxide dosing, that the parasites in that tank don't fully eradicate because you can't fully eradicate them. They could be hiding in a rock, they could be encysted, they could instantly attach to the fish so they're not exposed to the peroxide enough. But the peroxide's there to make sure that an outbreak can't occur. The parasite load stays low so that the fish can develop an immunity to it. Now, 9 times out of 10, I doubt these fish actually are properly infected with the disease. And if a customer wants to take home a fish and quarantine it themselves, I fully support that because the less chance that a disease has to take over your fish, the better. But in shop settings and in most people's cases, they don't have that ability to quarantine. And a healthy fish is usually going to fight off these diseases pretty okay. In saying that, I do have a recommendation that I think a lot of people should think about. And I understand that a lot of people are on budgets and can't necessarily do this, but UV is another method of keeping that parasite load low and allowing your fish to develop an immunity or just halting an outbreak. UVs are so important, but they have to be tuned properly. A lot of people will set up a UV and kind of just guesstimate the amount of the amount of liters per hour through it. They need to be tuned really well to your tank, and you need a powerful enough UV for your tank. So UV is actually the newest addition that's going to my fish systems. During the inception of the store, there was a budget that had to be followed, and that budget just simply did not allow for $1,000 units to be on my fish systems. I am now at a point where I can do that, and I've in fact just bought one, and this is the new globe for it. I happened to have someone give me a secondhand Aqua Ultraviolet, so that was very handy of them. This is 57 watts, so it'll definitely do my aquariums. Honestly, these UVs should deal with a lot of my problems just in themselves, but the hydrogen peroxide and just making sure the fish are nice and healthy and their slime coat is as healthy as possible will actually help just that extra bit. Making sure that I can continue to give people the best fish possible the strongest fish possible and fish that I believe will have the best longevity. Because honestly, that is just fair on the fish. So I'm actually going to finish this video here. It was a little bit drawn out to what I wanted to do, and the first time filming this was almost an hour of recording. I just had so much I needed to talk about. I've hopefully shrunk it down just a little bit more, hopefully kept your guys' attention as much as possible. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about how to do things or how I'm doing things, or if you have a current outbreak that you're dealing with. You know, I've seen a lot of tanks with outbreaks, and I've had my own outbreaks, and I've lost a lot of fish to outbreaks. I understand how it is. So please feel free to reach out to me and ask questions. On top of that, if you don't agree with anything I've said here, please let me know, and please tell me of some other methods or solutions that you believe are better. Because I'm not here to defend my pride. I don't care, honestly. The fish lives and their health matter a lot more to me than my pride if I'm wrong about something. I would happily be wrong about something, and I'd happily learn about a new method or a different method, something that works better. Like, if you think that what I'm doing is potentially killing my fish, please let me know. Being egotistical about it is just going to end up more fish death and less advancement in this area of the hobby, which a lot of us do experience and a lot of us do struggle with. Anyway, that's all from me. Happy reefing.